Alright lads, so another week of Guild Quest is officially done, and once more we have another preparation guide for the upcoming week of Guild Quest. And in this case, for next week, we're going to be going up against the arranged no affiliation Guild Quests. That will be phase 1, and then phase 2 will be going against captains where we want to bring melee characters. I would like to think once more, another pretty easy week for most people out there that have been playing this game for quite a while that are already ready to tackle the very hard Guild Quests. But as always, we're here in this video to go over some of the better options to bring and characters that you should consider using to potentially beat this very hard difficulty quest. So first up, let's have a look at our ranged no affiliation options. Now, recently we just finished doing the melee no affiliation Guild Quest, and as we did see with the most recent mid-month banner, Byakuya and Esnot, while not entirely designed for Guild Quests, you can use them outside of Guild Quests, and in particular, they don't have any Guild Quest focused skills, but they are encouraged for you to bring into these particular no affiliation Guild Quest weeks. So having a look at our main options here for the no affiliation ranged Guild Quest, one of your potential options to use here is actually going to be Esnot. Now, for starters, he is immune to freeze. That's going to be really good here. And he is also providing the good crowd control or safety net with his barrier SA2. And since he does have multi-barrier, you can stack this character, I believe, with 60% recharge, which is absolutely insane. You can just keep stacking that SA2, allowing your teammates to have a 3-hit barrier and yourself to have a 5-hit barrier. And that, for the most part, should easily be able to keep your team alive and protected, potentially stay up full stamina. Alongside that, Esnot, as we all do know, does have quite the high damage output, especially when he does inflict status augments, as he then does pick up the spiritual pressure boost. He has frenzy +2, and he does do 80% more damage to enemies that are inflicted with slow and also weakening. Now, for the first 2 seconds, when you do inflict weakening while it's active, you will then do an additional 50% more damage. But the weakening only lasts 2 seconds since it is nerfed in the hard and very hard difficulty of Guild Quest, and after that only slow will be left. Which honestly for Guild Quest content isn't even that bad. It will slow them down from even attacking you and therefore potentially allow your team to stay at full stamina since they shouldn't be really losing their barriers. At the same time, it is also worth mentioning his SA1. While it's not like the best strong attack one, it's actually really good for when you can push bosses backwards, and in this case, he can do that in Guild Quest. And if you get all the hits off with that SA1, which is very easily done if you just line it up correctly against a boss, you can actually do a lot of damage. So Esnot is actually going to be a pretty good character for this particular Guild Quest if you do want to use him there. But I don't think he's going to be your best option, because what you have up against him are essentially 3 characters that have a tracking vortex SA2. Because what we do know, in the very hard difficulty of Guild Quest, character with the 50-hit vortex, or in the case of Ichigo, a 75-hit vortex, you can just keep the enemies in place, allowing your 2 side characters, with or without barriers, just to keep doing damage, right? They won't have to worry about taking damage because the bosses and the enemies are always going to be stuck in your vortex. So of course, Ichigo here, being a ranged no affiliation killer, is going to be really good here. With frenzy +3, with the fact that he's going to be constantly inflicting weakening and drain, overall makes for a good lead for this quest. At the same time, in case you are using characters that don't have immunity, you can just give your team that complete stats immunity, which is going to be really good here. I think Ichigo is going to be a safe character to use here. I don't think he's going to be the fastest character since he only has frenzy 3, which I kind of say like it's a bad thing. It's not. But if you're going for the fastest play time possible, there'll be better characters to bring here. But this character will definitely be consistent and definitely going to be a safe character to bring nonetheless. And the reason why I say he won't be the fastest is because Maisie, for the most part, for most people, should be the go-to character that you can potentially bring here. She is, of course, a ranged no affiliation killer. That's why we're talking about her. But in her case, she can apply both weakening and also paralysis. But the fact that she has a tracking vortex SA2, that in of itself also, provides amazing crowd control, as we mentioned with Ichigo. But there are going to be times, when the vortex does wear off, you have to use an extra strong attack to keep the enemy occupied. But in her case, if the vortex wears off, there's a good chance they're paralyzed. And at that point, you don't have to worry about the extra 3 seconds you have to wait to use that SA2 once more. But in her case, she just has like a really high damage output, frenzy +2 with the status element boost, and you also do 80% more damage to paralyze and also weakened enemies. And alongside that, you also do have weakened defense. So when you do decide to use your soul bomb, not only are you trapping the enemy in place for around 8 or so seconds, you're also allowing your team to do 30% more damage per hit, which is going to be really, really good. Macy is probably the best lead for this Guild Quest, and if you have her, definitely consider using her. A lesser option that you can use, but again, another suitable character here is going to be Kaname. In this case, mainly just for the crowd control, right? He does essentially what Macy and 8th Anniversary Ichigo does, but to a worse degree. But still, it's not going to be too bad, right? He has Frenzy +2. He can inflict drain quite often for the most part, since he does have the Tracking Vortex SA2, a 50-hit Vortex. He is immune to freeze. If you want to use him as a main, you can definitely make him work, right? Understand though, he's mainly there just for the crowd control. While he himself can do a respectable amount of damage, he's mainly there for the SA2 to allow your 2 side characters, preferably non-attack damage characters, to do the job. But at the same time, unironically, you could just bring any of the 4 characters we did mention. Very rarely do you want to bring more than 1 SP character to a Guild Quest team. Ideally, the main setup is 1 SP leads that can provide crowd control or barriers, and then 2 side characters that can do non-attack damage. Now, in this case, unironically, you could bring Macy, Ichigo, Esno. You could bring Macy, Ichigo, Kaname. Because having 3 Vortex characters is going to be kind of insane, and you can pretty much guarantee at no point will anyone ever take damage, because they can't. They're stuck in the Vortex. Now, other than those 4 main leads, I don't think anyone else is going to be nearly as good here, right? I mean, sure, you could potentially work with this Toshiro, this Noelle, Nini, for example, but they're not going to be that good. You're going to be mainly at that point relying on your side characters, which let's go have a look at, right? So let's go sort by Flurry, because ideally, if you are bringing that character, you want to bring someone with Flurry. Now, I thought this week was going to be pretty good, but surprisingly, and I can't believe I never noticed this, there's only 3 normal attack damage characters you can bring here. That is absolutely shocking. But if you do have access to 2 of these 3 characters, especially alongside Macy, Esno, Kaname, or 8th Anniversary Ichigo, you're easily clearing this quest. Now, when it comes to these 3 NAD characters, if you have all 3, who would you want to bring? Now, you have 2 options for a boost character to provide those extra stats. It's either Momo, the swimsuit version, or 1000-Year Blood War Misaki. Now, between the 2, Misaki does do more damage. Despite this character coming out a year or 2 before Momo, she actually has a higher damage output, since I believe she has a, 80% bruiser. Momo only has a 60%. She's immune to freeze, and she also does have a barrier SA2, which will provide that extra safety if you aren't using someone like Esno, for example. So if you have the option between using Misaki or someone like Momo, for example, I would say use Misaki, but use the one that you have more investment in. If you have Misaki 1-5 but swimsuit Momo 5-5 or 2-5, you might as well go for Momo. And if you are using Esno as a main, using Momo as a side maybe might not be the worst idea here, because she also is inflicting slow, and that helps out Esno because he does 40% more damage to slowed enemies. But yeah, Momo's overall still a very good option too, right? She's a ranged NAD character, has a still good damage output, not higher than Misaki, but still a good damage output, can inflict slow, can also boost your team, and is also immune to freeze. But one character you definitely want to bring onto your team if you do have him is Kagarosa. Kagarosa's always been one of those characters that I've really enjoyed since he came out. He's a really good arena character, and it's always just been a really good NAD character, especially with the NAD string that he does have. Now, he's a character that is actually designed for Guild Quest. Despite being an arena character, he is designed for Guild Quest, and you can see here, he just has like a ridiculously high damage output. An 80% normal attack damage increase with Flurry +1, has that safety with the last ditch in case he does die, but it gets more range damage and more kill effect in Guild Quest, and also has an additional 20% normal attack damage buff that you can give to your speed characters. Unfortunately, there's no speed NAD character used alongside him. He also does have a Vortex SA2 and can't inflict any stats on it, which in some cases is probably for the best, since if you are using Esno or Mason, you want to inflict their status elements, weakening, slow, paralysis, for example. He won't mess with that, right? But yeah, overall, if you have Kagarosa, definitely work on him. He's the best normal attack dealing character for this particular Guild Quest, where you only have 3 options. The ideal setup here would be to use someone like Macy, for example, alongside Kagarosa and also Misaki. You can replace Misaki with, of course, Momo. You can use both Momo and Misaki, and you can use any of the Vortex characters that we did mention. Ichigo, Macy, Kaname, and of course also Esno, since he does provide the barriers. And then after that, we have the Amelia Captain Guild Quest. Now, I would like to think for most people out there that, again, have been playing for quite some time, should be one of the more easier weeks, especially, of course, if you do have Yashiro Unohana. She is also coming back, so she's probably going to return sometime next week. We know it is returning since it was data mined, but what we do know is that they like to return characters when they're, most optimal in Guild Quest content. In this case, both Yachiro and also Yamamoto are usable in this Guild Quest, so she's definitely returning. Yama included are returning sometime next week, potentially in the second half of the week when this quest is available. Now, the reason why this is easy is because, as we know, over the last 5 or so years, the meta in Brave Battles has all been about melee captain killers, right? So you can see here, all of these characters, while most of them weren't really designed for Guild Quest content, almost none of these characters were, to be fair. They were all designed for Brave Battles, but you potentially had upwards to 4 years, 5 years, even if you've been playing for that long, to summon for these Brave Battle characters. You might even have some of these duped out. You just have so many normal attack damage characters that you can use here that would easily carry you through this quest. If we scroll down far enough, you could use Yachiru, the old one that came out in 2019. You could use Kusaka. Not that good, to be fair, and same with this Yamamoto, but you could use them if you have them duped out, if you've been playing for that long. Chad, gonna be a good team booster, good damage output. Weekend, got more normal attack damage with his resurrection, will be good to use here. Khan for your on-world Noritora, a team booster, granted only for 10 seconds, I wouldn't rely on his boost, but you can use him. The resurrected Full Hollow 4th Anniversary Ichigo, you can use him. Shusuke Amagai, all the new gen Brave Battle characters, Dordoni, actually a character that's going to be good here, designed for Guild Quest content. But this Kenpachi, Kuriyashiki, Oko especially, Yuha especially, since he is going to be your team booster, the best one for that. Chadchu, another good character that you can use here. Any of these characters can be really good to use here, right? I think unironically the fastest team possible for those that are wondering, and we kind of saw it usable in the immediate Super Guild Quest, is Yachiru Unohana as your main DPS SP character. Alongside that, use Akon to boost and buff Yachiru Unohana's damage output, since she's getting 40% more damage to weakened enemies, 20% more strong attack damage from Akon, and then you can potentially use Yuha. He himself is doing damage, and he is also providing the extra 43% extra attack and also focus. Don't have Yuha, you can use Chad instead. That's the fastest team possible if you have Yachiru max transcended. Other than that though, you could probably just go Yachiru, Yamamoto, and also Yuha, and that team should easily beat it. If you find yourself struggling in terms of your character not staying alive enough, but you are and know you can clear it relatively quick, maybe giving them start barrier might not be the worst thing to do, right? I don't really want to highlight too many characters because there's just so many good options. You have such an access to a large amount of non-attack damage characters, which is what you want to see in Guild Quest. Two characters that I know would definitely work well together is Chad and also Abirama. Abirama is designed for Guild Quest, but both Chad and Abirama want to do damage to enemies not afflicted by an ailment. So those two characters alongside any SP character will work quite well here. I think the biggest struggle that you will see with this entire selection of characters is no one's really providing any barriers, right? So if you do see yourself dying more often, again, go with start barrier, maybe replace a non-attack damage dealing character and use someone like Mid or Hime, New Year's Renji, Southwest Soifon, just to get the extra support and also the boost effects. Of course, Yachiru is going to be the clear main for a lot of people here. At the same time, you could just use 6th Anniversary Aizen for the Vortex aspect. Use its SA2, keep the enemies in place, and just rely on your two normal attack damage dealing characters to do most of the work. And that definitely will work. And we'll try it ourselves tomorrow when we do go live, right? So for me, for my team, it's definitely going to be Yuha, Yachiru, and try the Akon. If the team doesn't clear us fast enough, I'll just do Yama, Yuha, and also Yachiru. And that team should also work quite well. But again, I have plenty of options here. I could use Dordoni. Dordoni's going to have a high damage output. I could use Thousand Year Bloodwood Ichigo as your SP team booster. Could use any of the resurrected characters, 4th Annie, Weekend, Shad. There's a lot of great options to use here. And you definitely have a lot of characters to work with. And this really shouldn't be that much of a bad week for most people. And I didn't have a look till just now. Probably should have mentioned it earlier. You can see the status element lineup. You can see the attribute lineup for these enemies. So using Macy, for example, wouldn't be a bad idea since the third boss is a power character. But since the final boss is a heart character, they are wanting you to use Esno here. And Esno would be actually pretty good, especially after you do use your soul bomb. You're pretty much going to go through that 5th boss really, really quick, even at 1 out of 5. As for the second phase, the final boss is a power character. So even more reason to use someone like Yachiru Unohana. Definitely the characters that you can bring here. Again, Captain Guild Quest has access to a lot of really good normal attack dealing characters that have been out in the game for a very long time. If you have any of those characters duped out, definitely consider using them. And then phase 1, while it doesn't have access to the most large amount of normal attack dealing characters, again, only 3 of them, there are some really good SP characters, 3 options actually, that provide a 50-hit Vortex, which is definitely what you want to do. A tracking Vortex more so. 75 hits on 8th Anniversary Ichigo. So this looks to be another easy week of Guild Quest. Obviously, depending where you are at, you might not be able to beat it just yet. But as far as the other killers do go, these are the more easy ones, right? Because there is a large amount of options here. With that said, though, let me know what team you guys plan to use. If you have any questions, feel free to answer that in the comments below. Feel free to ask that in the comments below. And I'll see you guys next time. Take care and peace.